Hello everybody and welcome to my YouTube channel, Art Classes My Way. We are going to be finishing this bear's eyes today, and it's going to be a pretty simple little project. So this is a how to paint eyes tutorial. I do apologize if my shadow ends up getting in the way of the light, but we're going to be focusing on this eye here. And first thing we're going to do is start off with the pupil. Let's see. Now if you want to make your animal seem like it is absolutely possessed, and this goes for humans as well, go for a small tiny little pupil. The smaller you get, the more unnerving and kind of insane feeling pardon me, you're going to end up getting. Now, you don't have to worry about this being a absolutely perfect circle. Just try to get it to something that feels close. There we are. Let me go look at my photo real quick. Now I probably have gotten that just a tiny bit too big for a grizzly bear, but once that dries we'll worry about it then. I'll just go over here and try to get it a little bit more accurate, because it does seem as though when it comes to a grizzly bear, their pupils are actually kind of on the small side, but what makes them feel a lot more living, more human-esque is that they are see here, is it all of the color from the iris. Now there is a dark ring around that color, so I want to go ahead and put that down. And I kind of want it to start coming in underneath. It can disappear behind the eyelid. That is 100% fine. But if you ever look, even at humans, if you look at humans, it's never just the iris goes above and below both eyelids. A lot of the time, actually, what's going on, if you really look at it, normally the bottom of the iris is just kissing the bottom eyelid. There we are. Now I've got red, raw sienna, or burnt sienna, red, burnt sienna, and umber again, raw umber. And I want something, we're wanting a brown that is a more red version of our sienna. So I'm just going to kind of mix these two here. And it's going to take a lot more red to mix a small amount of sienna. And we don't want it 100% using all of our sienna and all of our red. We do want some left over. So just to show you, there's our mix. Because eyes do have quite a bit more depth to them than just one color. So I'm going to come in here. And because we're mixing red in, this might take a few layers. Red just doesn't cover fantastically. Especially when your background's already black, and even if you have a white background, it just... Whoop, come on, steady your hand here. Even if you have a white background, you're probably not going to get the richness of color that you're intending to get originally. So we'll let that dry a little bit and we'll go back over to that eye. If you're wondering how I know where I'm going, I do have pencil lines already put down. I'm going to clean off my brush here and take away some of that looking demonic at the moment. Take away some of this Pryor's gray that I'm using for the pupil. That way it'll dry faster and then I can make it much smaller. So I can just take it over here. To the outer edge. Now we don't want this to look like it is a perfect dark line and then the iris. The Pryor's gray does bleed a little bit into that redness, so we can blend it just a little bit, and it's preferred. And I'm using a pretty small brush. It's a round brush. And I'm not using the whole brush, I'm just using the tips of the brush. This will give it some feeling of depth. Get some more here. Alright, clean off my paintbrush again a little bit. Yeah, it takes away some of your glare there. Alright. It's not 100% dry, and it is better if you wait for your painting to dry. We'll just fix up some of our blending. Clean off my paintbrush again. I want this to be pretty precise, so I will be cleaning my paintbrush off quite a lot. Now eventually we will do the white of the eyes, but for now that is not the top priority. That'll be the last little bit we do. And I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of raw sienna and highlight some of the eyelids a little bit more, so that way the eyelids feel like they are on top of the eye. A lot more rounded, and actually quite a bit more down here, and really the up of the eye, more like that. So that means I gotta get some red and some Friar's gray in there. And we're just sketching this out. Even though this seemed like a very finished area, clearly it's not. It's an area that I really haven't worked with too much. I worked with out here. I do know that there are some dark hairs around the eyes, but I left it pretty general. One, just in case, and if you haven't noticed, I did drop this eye quite a bit from where my painting had originally started, because line, slightly off, and line, and that looks like it's right on. So we have a line situation that's going through there that needs to be maintained. Go ahead and recolor all this here. We can even put down some of our second layer of color. Now my pupil's gone off center, so paint over him. Demonic grizzly bear at the moment. Alright, now let's make these eyes a little bit less red and start going towards just plain old brown eyes. And how we're going to do that, we're going to start off with just our sienna, burned sienna. And yeah, I'm going to take this. Basically, this is like a highlight, this brighter red color. So we're going to take this, come in here. Tone it down just a tiny bit. Of course, obviously all that got covered up. And while I'm painting this, I'm also making all my paint strokes come in towards the eye. So if I'm over here, I'm going to try to make it go this way, this way, this way, because that's how an iris works, obviously. Because if we tried to put deeper, darker colors in now, it'll mix with everything. And then it won't feel like shadow over top. And let us get some of our yellow color here that I can't remember at the moment. I've mentioned it earlier, so go back and look at it. I'm gonna mix it just a little bit with that red so I can lighten it up. A small amount. Now while you're mixing all of these on top of wet paint, pretty much the wet paint is there as a way to blend all the colors together so you don't have just a stark, oh, here's 3 different colors. You want to be able to blend the edges, but the center, you are still going to want it to stand alone as its own color. So I'm going back in here and just putting down some straight color. Same with over here. Alright, and I think I'm going to give that a few minutes to just let it dry. So we will be right back. Alright, I turned my other light back on for just a little bit here so I could see better. And as you can see, this highlight that we put underneath that is supposed to be representing direct light hitting the inside of the eye, or it could even be reflecting back onto the eye from the outermost layer, the clear layer that you see through that makes the roundness of your eye. Pardon me if I don't know all my eye terminology, but that's pretty much what that is. And you can even go back in with just straight that color once it dries and just put a little bead of it just straight. So that way it's not mixed with anything and it just makes it feel a little brighter, like there's more light in it. And want to go with a kidney bean shape. It's not just a half moon shape. The light kind of rounds out because keep in mind all those folds in the iris when the iris, or in the, all the folds in the, yeah, that's the eye. Oh hell, whatever it is. All the folds in the color part of the eye are, it's kind of like fabric wrapped around a rubber band. And as that rubber band gets smaller and larger, the fabric that goes around it changes with it. And it's all being pulled into that area. So now I'm going to go in here with umber, just straight umber. And we're going to tone back some of this redness a little bit more. And it's basically kind of going to act like our shadows, but it's not really. Shadows are going to be represented as something different. There we go. And now we have very nice, warm, brown eyes. I would argue that the red is fairly important just to get that vividness of something that is not so earthy as, for instance, the bear's hair, or as grounded in nature as most of the bear. Eyes are something almost kind of magical. They almost sparkle all by themselves. And you need something, just a little touch of a color that rarely shows up, one in your picture, and two out in nature, to really make it pop, make it feel like it's alive. So we're pretty much going to wait for those to dry. I'm going to go ahead and redarken up some of the eye here, coming inwards, so that way it feels like a stripe around the eye. And over here again. A little bit more than that. And this is just Pryor's gray. It may look like black. It is not. It's a little touch of blue. And if you wanted to go in here with an even tinier brush, and just put some of those folds in. Even though I will be done with this series on this particular painting, I will probably still have up to another 5 to 6 hours worth of work that I will still get due to it, just detailing up things that'll be pretty hard for me to get in here with a camera to work around. It's already kind of hard to work around with as it is, with just this eye part going on. And which everything that I just did, you guys probably can't even see what I just did. It's going to be more of an up-close detail. I'm going to work on the actual eyelids themselves. Now, the eyelids aren't exactly any color that we've seen in the fur or the hair. The skin of a grizzly bear is black, and obviously around here this should be black as well, but if we just painted it straight black, we still need highlights and lowlights. So I'm going to take some of the browns and such that I have here, so that way we can use them up and they don't go to waste, and mix them with my Pryor's gray a little bit to get something that's just a little bit less than straight Pryor's gray. And it'll act as my highlight. And we'll go over the top of all this. And it's perfectly fine to let some of this shine through, because it is also going to act as our highlight. The back of the bear's eye is very, very round. And now we have that. We're just going to go in with Pryor's Gray. Double check myself before I make a mark. And this is going to be pretty much the fold of the eyelid. And we'll just fade all this off into the black hair. Mix that in a little bit better with our browns, which is pretty much the very first video I made. You were just taking the raw umber, mixing it with our sienna, getting these colors in here and just going back in and just fading this out a little bit more like it should be. And right back to what we were doing before, Pryor's gray and coming in and defining our highlighted areas. Which we would actually be able to see a little bit more of what, human-wise, the corner of the eye, a little bit more on this one than we would this one. Let that dry for a little bit. All right, now for the part that probably a lot of you are waiting for, we're going to add in the white, but we cannot do stark white. That would be way too much. So we're going to take a lot of white and just a tiny amount of Pryor's gray and just give it a little bit of a tint, a little bit of gray to it. We don't want it to be stark white, otherwise that's all anybody's going to notice about it. And there we are. Just a little bit of an off-white. And if you don't want to mix Pryor's gray, you can always take some of your browns, because I'm sure we've all seen that. Animals that have just a, you know, just the whites of their eyes is tinged just a little bit, which I think I'll do as well. And we're just going to put a solid amount of that color right there, and a very small amount right there in this corner. Now we're going to just spread it kind of thin, so that way it doesn't seem too bright. I'm going to wipe off some of this paint on my paintbrush so that way I can spread this thinner as well. This will help adding shape to the eyeball. By it being darker in the corners than it is up here, that gives it the look and the illusion of it being rounded. Now this eye is quite a bit more open than this one, so we're going to close it up just a little bit with the Pryor's gray. Be very careful to try to get the exact same shapes going on. There we are, a little better. And from here, I'm going to take a touch of white and mix it with mostly Pryor's Gray, choke on my own words here. I just want something that's slightly lighter than just straight Pryor's Gray. Actually, this might work better just to go with straight white and go into what I've already painted. I'll make that a little smaller. I don't know if you guys could tell, but that was kind of difficult for me to get in the right angle there, but you can always just correct it and make it feel a little more narrow and a little smaller by just putting more straight Pryor's Gray back in there. None of the eye feels sticky. I don't see any shine coming off of it like the paint is still wet, so that means we can do our final step and add shine to the eyes. Now this can be pretty straight white, but I'm going to thin it down and make it more of a glaze. That way it feels like white, but you got the overall arcing feeling that perhaps there's reflections involved, and if you want to, feel free to go right ahead. When you're doing reflection in an animal's eyes, normally the white, the shine part, is the sky. Just go with that being white, and the outline of whatever it is, you just leave it pretty much empty. So you're getting your whites very detailed and very correct will be pretty important if that's what you want to do. I, however, am not. So I'm just going to kind of give the general idea of this bear's eye being round. Need a little more water to flow better. All right, well, I'm pretty happy with that. So, and it's just a little bit of nutting. There's not a whole lot to it, and I will show you a close-up here. And there we have it. So, it wasn't a whole lot of white. It's not really describing anything in particular. It could be anything. So, it's, as long as it's kind of generally following the shape of what, trying to make your eye feel rounded, that's really the most important thing. Let me show you the other one. Now that one you could interpret it as possibly being a pine tree in the background. What's reflected in one eye doesn't always have to be reflected in the other. Sorry for the glare. So, yeah. And I probably got another 8 or so hours worth of work into this, and that's just doing the teeny tiny little details, getting a very small paintbrush and putting the highlights of the black hair around his eyes and making it feel like there's actually hair there, and just giving it just some glossy marks, and taking around and just giving some detailed hairs here and there, a little bit more around the lips just to define that a little bit more. And I'm going to go ahead and yellow the teeth. I've decided, after looking at this all evening in my living room, that the teeth are just, he's seen too many dentists. This is a bear in a zoo or something, very well taken care of bear. We need to get a little bit more tartar going on in there. So that's going to be something I'm going to go ahead and do. And I do hope you guys all enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And the point of this channel is to leave down in the comments sections questions that you may have about how to paint, how to do jewelry smithing. I do watercolors, oils, and acrylics. So please ask. I'm here for you guys. This is going to be in my October show. If it sells, it's going to sell with the stipulation of I will need this for next year's October show. Please let me have it. Of course, I'm not going to turn down anybody buying it, but it is one of the central pieces. It and the buffalo painting I'm going to do next are pretty much the central core ideas that I'm trying to go for. So yeah, and I hope y'all enjoyed this. Thanks for coming and hanging out.